$127,000. That was exactly what I discovered my daughter-in-law had made by selling my family jewelry over the course of 3 years. Pieces that carried not only monetary value, but decades of memories, love, and history. When I confronted Patricia about it, she simply shrugged and said with that cold smile, "I'll never forget I sold your jewelry. Forget the past, old lady." And then she threw the framed photo of my wedding to the floor, the glass shattering at my feet. I wept as she destroyed the last pieces of my life. Until I found a letter hidden in my late husband William's desk. All fortune, properties, and bank accounts belonged to her. That very day, Patricia lost everything. If you're listening now, know that this is a true story about betrayal, pain, manipulation, and ultimately justice. This channel is dedicated to sharing experiences that may be similar to yours, so you know you're not alone. If you've ever experienced a difficult family situation or know someone who is, this story may help. Subscribe to the channel, like it, and share it with anyone who needs to hear it. Now I'll tell you exactly how it all began and how I managed to regain not only what was rightfully mine, but also my dignity. My name is Eleanor Harrison, and I'm 68 years old. My story really begins 5 years ago when I lost William, my partner of 4 decades. William was a successful businessman, the kind who started from scratch and built a small fortune through hard work and intelligence. We met when I was just 21, working as a secretary at the company where he was a junior manager. It was love at first sight, the kind you feel in your stomach. We married 6 months later and built a life together. We had only one child, Michael, who is now 42. William had always been a careful and cautious man when it came to money. "Eleanor, the world can be cruel, especially to single women," he would say, as he meticulously organized our financial paperwork. I smiled and nodded, but never paid much attention. I trusted him completely to manage our finances, and honestly, I never took much interest in such matters. Perhaps that was my first mistake. When William died of a massive heart attack in March 2020, I felt like half of me was gone. Suddenly, I found myself alone in our large 5-bedroom house in suburban Boston, surrounded by memories and possessions we'd accumulated over 43 years of marriage. Michael had been married to Patricia for 15 years, and they lived just 20 minutes away with our 2 wonderful grandchildren, Emma and Lucas, ages 14 and 12. In the first months after William's death, Patricia was surprisingly attentive. She came to visit me almost daily, bringing home-cooked meals, helping me clean the house, and even taking me for walks. "Don't worry about a thing, Eleanor. You're like a mother to me. We'll take care of you," she would say, with that smile that I naively believed was genuine. Michael was busy taking over his father's business, so it was mostly Patricia who kept me company. It was her idea for me to move into the guest house at the back of their property. "You shouldn't be alone in that huge house, Eleanor. There have been so many break-ins lately. And just think how good it would be for the children to have their grandmother around every day." The proposal seemed sensible and loving. The house where I lived with William was truly too big for a single woman, and the idea of being near my grandchildren every day was tempting. In September 2020, I sold our house for $1.2 million. Michael suggested we invest the money, but Patricia insisted it would be better to keep it in a joint account that she would help manage. "You know how complicated these investment things can be, Eleanor. Let us handle it for you." Again, I trusted her. After all, she was my daughter-in-law, the mother of my grandchildren, and my son's wife. Why wouldn't I? The guest house was comfortable, but small, just a bedroom, living room, kitchen, and bathroom. Even so, I felt happy to be close to family. For the first few months, everything seemed perfect. We had dinner together almost every day. I picked up the kids from school 3 times a week, helped with their homework, and felt useful again. It was in January 2021 that I noticed the first changes in Patricia's behavior. Small things, subtle at first. She began making comments about my personal belongings that I had brought from my old house. "Geez, Eleanor, do you really need all those knickknacks? They just collect dust." Or, "That old sofa doesn't match the guest house decor. Let's buy a new one and get rid of it." Little by little, objects I loved were removed, always with some seemingly reasonable excuse. Among these objects were my jewelry. Not all of it was valuable in a monetary sense, but each piece told a story. The pearl necklace William gave me when Michael was born. The ruby earrings I received for our 25th wedding anniversary. The sapphire brooch that belonged to my grandmother. Patricia began to suggest that I no longer needed them. What does a lady your age need so much jewelry for, Eleanor? You hardly leave the house. I don't know exactly when she started selling them. Maybe it was gradual, a piece here, another there. I only realized they were disappearing when in June 2021. I wanted to wear the emerald ring William had given me for our 30th anniversary to Emma's graduation dinner. I couldn't find it anywhere. When I mentioned the disappearance to Patricia, she frowned and said, "You probably lost it, Eleanor. Your memory hasn't been so good lately, has it?" It was the first time she'd suggested I might be going senile. It wasn't true. I always had an excellent memory, but the suggestion made me unsure. Had I really lost the ring that was just the first of many hints? Over the next few months, Patricia began planting seeds of doubt, not only in me, but also in Michael and the grandchildren. Grandma forgot to turn off the stove again. I found Grandma. Confused in the garden yesterday, she didn't. Know what time it was? We. Need to keep an eye on your mother, Michael. I think she's developing. Dementia? I knew I wasn't going crazy. I occasionally forgot little things like anyone, but nothing out of the ordinary for my age. However, when you hear something repeatedly, you start to question your own reality. And when your own child looks at you with concern and asks, "Mom, are you feeling okay? Are you remembering things correctly?" the doubt grows. In December 2021, Patricia suggested I needed help managing my finances. Due to my declining memory, she proposed that Michael take over my financial power of attorney. How could I refuse? My own son was worried about me, and I didn't want to be a burden. I signed the papers they brought me without reading them carefully. Another mistake. It was around this time that Patricia also began restricting my interactions with her grandchildren. Emma and Lucas are too busy with their extracurricular activities, Eleanor. We can't let you pick them up from school anymore. Or, the kids need to focus on their studies. They can't be visiting Grandma all the time. My precious time with Emma and Lucas was reduced to brief supervised encounters, usually with Patricia present. Michael's visits also became less frequent. There was always an excuse: work, childcare commitments, tiredness. When he did come to see me, Patricia rarely left him alone with me. She hovered nearby, controlling our conversation with her presence. If I tried to mention my concerns, she quickly intervened. "Eleanor's having one of her moments again, dear. Remember the doctor said this can happen." Which doctor? I'd never been diagnosed with any cognitive impairment. But Michael believed his wife. Why wouldn't he? In March 2022, exactly 2 years after William's death, I noticed more jewelry missing. This time it was the diamond set William had given me for our 40th anniversary. Necklace, earrings, and bracelet worth at least $50,000. When I confronted Patricia, her response was different. "Oh, those old things, I sold them months ago," she said casually, as if talking about selling used clothes. "You don't need them anymore, and the money is being put to good use for the family's needs." I was shocked. "You sold my jewelry without asking me. They were gifts from William." It was then that I saw Patricia's true face for the first time. Her smile faded, and she looked at me coldly. "Listen here, Eleanor. You live under our roof now. Michael has your power of attorney. Legally, we can manage your assets as we see fit. And honestly, why does an old woman like you need expensive jewelry? To impress whoever is in the nursing home." His words hit me like a slap. "Asylum? What asylum? Oh, haven't we told you yet? Michael and I were thinking it would be best for you, with your condition worsening and all. ... She smiled again, that fake smile I now clearly recognized. That night, I cried myself to sleep. The next day, I tried to reach Michael, but he was too busy at work, according to Patricia. I tried calling some old friends, but discovered that my phone only allowed calls to pre-approved numbers. Patricia had blocked my contacts for my safety. For the first time, I felt true fear. I was being isolated, manipulated, and robbed by my own family. Or at least by Patricia still believed. Michael was simply being deceived by her, that he would never knowingly consent to such treatment of his own mother. In June 2022, Patricia began bringing in flyers for senior living communities, a euphemism for assisted living facilities. Look how beautiful this one is, Eleanor. They have activities every day, 24-hour medical care. It would be perfect for you. I tried to protest, saying I was perfectly fine living in the guest house, that I didn't need any special care. But Patricia had an answer for everything. You think you're fine, but that's because you don't realize your own lapses. Last week you forgot Emma's name. I hadn't forgotten my granddaughter's name. It never had. But when I tried to say so, Patricia sighed and looked at me with false compassion. See, you don't even remember forgetting. It was during this period that I began to notice other things disappearing. Not just jewelry, but objects of sentimental value. William's father's pocket watch. The antique coin collection we started together. Photo albums. When I questioned Patricia, she always had the same answer. Either I had lost the objects due to my condition, or they had been sold to help with expenses. In September 2022, I was informed that my move-on date to Sunset Gardens, a retirement home, nearly 2 hours away, had been set for the following month. We've already paid the deposit, Eleanor. It's a lovely place. You'll love it. And we'll be able to visit ... as often as possible. Patricia said, not even trying to hide the falseness in her voice. That night, after another tense dinner where I was treated like an incompetent child, I returned to the guest house and cried desperately. How had it gotten to this point? How had I allowed this to happen? William would have been furious if he knew how I was being treated. William ... It was then that I remembered. In the last months of his life, William spent a lot of time in his office organizing papers and filing documents. He mentioned several times that he was getting everything in order for me. In the confusion after his death and the hasty move to the guest house, I never got to fully examine his personal papers. Most of his belongings had been packed into boxes that now sat in the small attic of the guest house. I waited until after midnight, when I was sure everyone in the main house would be asleep, and went up to the attic. Among several dusty boxes, I found the ones containing William's office belongings. I spent hours poring over every folder, every envelope. Stock certificates, insurance policies, property deeds. Most of these documents I was already vaguely familiar with. But then, hidden in the false spine of one of his favorite books, I found a sealed letter addressed to me in William's unmistakable handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and began to read, "My dear Eleanor. If you're reading this letter, it means I'm gone from this world and you found my secret hiding place. We've always been honest with each other throughout our marriage, but there's one thing we've never fully discussed: the extent of our assets and how they're structured. Eleanor, over the years, I've learned not to completely trust people when it comes to money, not even family. Our son Michael is a good man, but his wife, Patricia, has always seemed ... self-serving. I hope I'm wrong, but my instincts are rarely wrong when it comes to matters of character. Therefore, I have taken certain legal precautions. While it may seem like I left a considerable inheritance for Michael, to manage the truth is that I have created a complex legal arrangement. The entire fortune, properties, and bank accounts belong to you, Eleanor. Exclusively to you. Attached to this letter is the official document, an irrevocable trust established in your name with you as the sole beneficiary. The house we recently sold, our savings and investments, all are legally protected for your exclusive benefit. Michael has access only as a trustee, with a strict legal duty to always act in your best interests. Furthermore, I have secretly hired the law firm Johnson & Blackwell to oversee the administration of the trust. They have instructions to intervene if they detect any misuse of the funds. Mr. Robert Johnson's business card is enclosed with this letter. Eleanor, if anything goes wrong, if you feel you're being manipulated, or if your assets are being mismanaged, contact Mr. Johnson immediately. He has all the necessary instructions and legal authority to protect you and your interests. I'm sorry if it seems I didn't trust you to handle these matters directly. You've always been the light of my life, the love that gave meaning to everything. But I also knew your kindness, your tendency to see the best in people. I feared that same kindness might be exploited in my absence. Everything we've built together is rightfully yours. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. With all my love until we meet again, William. Attached to the letter was a business card from Robert Johnson, an attorney, and a legal document confirming everything William had written. The irrevocable trust, the legal arrangements, everything was there in black and white. Sitting alone in the dusty attic, I felt a mix of emotions flood through me. Relief that William had protected me even after his death. Anger at having been so naive. Determination to regain control of my life. And above all, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The sun was already beginning to rise when I returned to my room, carefully hiding the letter and documents in a safe place. I needed to proceed cautiously. If Patricia discovered what I knew, she might try to destroy the evidence or force me into the asylum before I could do anything about it. For the next 3 days, I've maintained the same routine, pretending to be resigned to the idea of moving to Sunset Gardens. I meekly accepted it when Patricia informed me that they would need to donate some more of my things, as the room at the nursing home was small. I smiled politely during dinner when Michael mentioned, without looking me in the eye, how I would be better cared for in the new place. On the morning of the 4th day, I waited for everyone to leave. Michael to work, Patricia to take the kids to school, and then to her weekly spa day. Once the house was empty, grabbed my purse with my carefully stored documents and hailed a taxi. "Where to, ma'am?" asked the driver. "Johnson and Blackwell downtown," I replied with a determination I hadn't felt in a long time. The law office was imposing, occupying half a floor of a downtown Boston office building. When I introduced myself at the reception desk and mentioned Robert Johnson's name, I was immediately ushered into a private waiting room. Less than 5 minutes later, a middle-aged man with gray hair and a kind expression entered the room. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm Robert Johnson. I've been waiting for your visit for quite some time." Confused, I asked what he meant. "Your husband hired me over 5 years ago, Mrs. Harrison. Since then, I have discreetly monitored the administration of the trust he established for you. I must say that over the past 2 years, I have observed disturbing irregularities." At that moment, all the emotions I had suppressed came flooding back, and I began to cry. Through sobs, I told Mr. Johnson everything: the jewelry I'd sold, the isolation, the lies about my mental health, the plan to send me to a nursing home. Mr. Johnson listened intently, occasionally taking notes. When I finished, he stood and said in a determined voice, "Miss Harrison, what was done to you is not only morally reprehensible, but also legally actionable. Fraud, elder abuse, misappropriation of assets, ... We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I can assure you we will solve this over the next few hours." Mr. Johnson and his team guided me through the next steps. First, we immediately revoked the power of attorney I had granted Michael. Then we sent official notifications to all banks and financial institutions, alerting them to the fraudulent use of my funds. A forensic accountant was assigned to track exactly how much money had been misappropriated over the past 2 years. "As for your accommodations," said Mr. Johnson, "it wouldn't be safe for you to return to the guest house now. I suggest you stay in a hotel for a few days until we sort out the legal situation." I agreed, though the thought of not returning to retrieve my belongings was painful. Mr. Johnson assured me that everything would be legally recovered in due course. That night, in a comfortable Marriott room, I enjoyed my first restful sleep in months. The next morning, the hotel phone rang. It was Mr. Johnson. "Miss Harrison, we have some news. We've gained access to your bank accounts and financial records. The situation is, well, you'll want to come to the office so we can discuss it in person." 2 hours later, sitting again in Mr. Johnson's office, I received the full impact of what Patricia and possibly Michael had done. According to our preliminary analysis, the forensic accountant explained approximately $850,000 transferred from the trust account to personal accounts over the past 2 years. This includes approximately $600,000 of the proceeds from the sale of your home. Additionally, we identified transactions at several pawn shops and jewelry auctions totaling approximately 10 million, which we believe correspond to your unauthorized jewelry sales. I was stunned by the sums. Almost $1 million embezzled in just 2 years. And there's more, Mr. Johnson continued. We discovered that your daughter-in-law made a $150,000 deposit on a new vacation home in Lake Tahoe 3 weeks ago. The house is in her name only, not Michael's. That caught me off guard. Not from Michael. You think he doesn't know Mr. Johnson's side. It's possible your son isn't aware of the full extent of his wife's actions. We'll need to investigate further to determine her level of involvement. Just then, my cell phone rang. It was Patricia. I showed the screen to Mr. Johnson, who nodded. Answer it, but don't reveal where you are or what you found. Let's see what she wants. With the phone on speaker, I answered. Patricia's voice sounded falsely concerned. Eleanor, where are you? We're all so worried. I came home and you weren't there. Are you okay trying to keep my voice calm? I replied, I'm fine, Patricia. I just needed some time to myself. Oh, thank God, but you shouldn't go out alone, Eleanor, not in your condition. Michael is about to call the police. Why don't you tell me where you are so we can go get you? Mr. Johnson shook his head. No need, Patricia. I'm fine where I am. I'll come back when I'm ready. Patricia's feigned concern quickly turned to irritation. That's ridiculous, Eleanor. You're in no position to make that kind of decision. Tell me where you are right now. I'm sorry, Patricia, but I have to go. We'll talk later. I ended the call before she could protest any further. Mr. Johnson smiled. Very well. Now let's discuss our next steps. The strategy was clear. First, legally secure full control over my assets. Second, document all fraudulent transactions. Third, confront Michael and Patricia with irrefutable evidence. And fourth, determine the appropriate legal consequences. Regarding this, Mr. Johnson explained, you have options. We can pursue civil action to recover the misappropriated funds plus damages. We can also present the case to criminal authorities for possible prosecution for fraud and elder abuse. The decision is yours. The mention of criminal charges against my own son gave me pause. Despite everything, Michael was still my son. I need to think about this. And I need to talk to Michael alone, find out if he knew everything. Mr. Johnson understood my hesitation. It's understandable. But remember, Mrs. Harrison, your husband, foresaw this possibility and took steps to protect you. Don't let feelings of guilt or family loyalty keep you from doing what's right for yourself. Over the next few days, Mr. Johnson's team worked tirelessly. They obtained court orders, collected evidence, and prepared legal documentation. Patricia continued to call several times a day, alternating between false concern and veiled threats about my mental incompetence. Michael called only twice, sounding genuinely concerned, but also pressuring me to return home. On the fifth day, everything was ready. Mr. Johnson had secured an emergency hearing with a judge who agreed with the gravity of the situation and issued temporary orders freezing all disputed assets. Additionally, a restraining order was issued against Patricia, prohibiting her from disposing of any assets potentially acquired with embezzled funds, including the Lake Tahoe home. It's time to confront them, Mr. Johnson said. We've arranged a meeting in our office for tomorrow at 10 a.m. We've already sent formal notices to your son and daughter-in-law demanding their presence. I spent that night awake, thinking about everything that would happen the next day. How would Michael react? Did he really know everything? And Patricia, how? Would she try to defend herself most? Importantly, how would I feel about facing them after everything that had happened the next morning? I arrived at Mr. Johnson's office an hour before the scheduled meeting. He greeted me with an encouraging smile and led me to a conference room where his team was already waiting. Documents were neatly stacked, a projector was set up for presenting evidence, and water and coffee were readily available. Mrs. Harrison, Mr. Johnson, remember, you are in control now. We will conduct most of the meeting, but if you want to speak, interrupt, or ask questions at any time, feel free. This is your life, your finances, your dignity that we are defending. I nodded, feeling a strange calm wash over me. After so long of being manipulated and made a fool of, I was finally regaining control. At 1005, Michael and Patricia entered the room. My son looked confused and anxious. Patricia, on the other hand, exuded an arrogant confidence as if this meeting were just a temporary inconvenience. Mom, Michael ran to hug me. We've been so worried. Why did you run away like that? Why didn't you tell us where you were?" Before I could respond, Patricia interjected, "And what is this place? Why are we in a law office?" She looked around, taking in the lawyers, the documents, the formal surroundings, and her fake smile faltered. Slightly. Mr. Johnson stood and extended his hand. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, thank you for coming. I am Robert Johnson, attorney for Mrs. Eleanor Harrison. Please be seated. We have much to discuss." Michael shook his hand automatically, looking even more confused. "Lawyer, Mom, you hired a lawyer what for?" Patricia didn't shake the offered hand. Instead, she crossed her arms defensively. "This is ridiculous. Eleanor is obviously not in her right mind. She's been showing signs of dementia for months. Anything she told you is the result of mental confusion." Mr. Johnson smiled politely. "Ms. Harrison, if you're referring to allegations of dementia, I should inform you that Ms. Eleanor Harrison underwent a full neuropsychological evaluation this week with 3 independent experts. They all concluded that she is in full possession of her mental faculties. We have the reports here if you'd like to review them." Patricia's face paled visibly. Michael looked from Mr. Johnson to me, clearly trying to understand what was happening. "Mom, what's all this about?" I finally spoke. "Michael, Patricia has been selling my jewelry and embezzling my money. She planned to put me in a nursing home against my will while using my money to buy a vacation home in Lake Tahoe." Michael turned to his wife, shocked. "What is she talking about, Patricia?" Patricia forced a laugh. "That's absurd. I just sold some old jewelry she no longer wore with her permission. And the house in Lake Tahoe is an investment for the family. You know that, an investment in your name only." Mrs. Harrison, Mr. Johnson interjected. "And as for the jewelry, we have records of 23 separate pieces sold at pawn shops and auctions in the last 2 years totaling approximately—" "LRT ling ling ling," Mr. Johnson then activated the projector and images of my jewelry appeared on the screen, along with sales receipts, all signed by Patricia. Michael looked stunned. "Patricia, what did you do?" Patricia remained defensive. "It was all for the good of the family. Eleanor didn't need these things." "What about the $850,000 transferred from the trust accounts to personal accounts?" Mr. Johnson asked, switching to another presentation showing bank statements and transfer records. Michael gasped. $850,000, Patricia. You said we were just using the interest to help with Mom's expenses." It was at that moment that I realized Michael didn't know. He had been deceived too, though his willful blindness had made him an unwitting accomplice. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. Mr. Johnson and his team presented evidence after evidence, bank transactions, jewelry sales, even text messages and emails from Patricia to real estate agents and luxury salespeople. The case against her was irrefutable. Michael alternated between being shocked by each new revelation and trying to defend his wife. There must be some misunderstanding. Patricia would never do this intentionally. Patricia, for her part, changed tactics several times, first denying everything, then minimizing her actions, then blaming Michael. "You said we could use the money," and finally attacking me. "You never accepted me as part of the family." At the end of the presentation, Mr. Johnson outlined the legal options. Ms. Eleanor Harrison is entitled to full restitution of all embezzled funds, plus interest and possibly punitive damages. Furthermore, there is sufficient evidence to support criminal charges of fraud, embezzlement, and elder abuse. However, my client has indicated that she would prefer to resolve this matter civilly if possible. Patricia finally broke down. "You can't do that. It would ruin our lives." I looked her straight in the eye for the first time since the meeting began. "How did you try to ruin mine, Patricia? By selling my memories, isolating me from my family, making my own son doubt me. By planning to abandon me in a nursing home while you spent my money." Michael looked devastated. "Mom, I didn't know the extent. Patricia told me you were confused, that you needed constant supervision, and you believed her without question, without asking me, without consulting independent doctors. I'm your mother, Michael." Tears began to stream down my son's face. "I'm so sorry, double quotes." Mr. Johnson intervened again. "We have a proposed resolution. All embezzled funds must be returned immediately. The Lake Tahoe home must be sold and the proceeds returned to the trust. All jewelry still in Mrs. Patricia Harrison's possession must be returned. And finally, Mrs. Eleanor Harrison wishes to return the home she purchased with her funds. The main house where you currently reside. Our house, exclaimed Patricia. And where will we live? The guest house seems suitable for Mrs. Eleanor Harrison for 2 years. Mr. Johnson replied coldly, Perhaps it will suit you now. Michael nodded slowly. Fair enough. More than fair, actually. Patricia turned to him furious. You can't be serious. Let's fight this with what money, Patricia. Michael finally raised his voice. All that money you spent wasn't ours to begin with. It was my mother's and you. You treated her like that, ... You lied to me about her mental health, ... The argument between the two continued, but I was no longer listening. A sense of peace enveloped me. Whatever happened from now on, the truth had been revealed. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't senile. And thanks to William's foresight, she wasn't helpless. Mr. Johnson leaned over to me and whispered, Are you okay, ma'am? I smiled and nodded. Better than I've been in a long time. 2 weeks have passed since that fateful meeting. The transformation in my life was almost instantaneous. With Mr. Johnson's legal help, I regained full control of my finances. A full inventory of my assets was conducted, and a plan to recover the embezzled funds was implemented. Patricia and Michael moved into the guest house while I returned to the main house. The Lake Tahoe house was put up for sale, and all of Patricia's unsold jewelry only. A third of her original collection was returned to me. When I moved back into the main house, I found many of my things moved or missing. My bedroom had been transformed into a workout room for Patricia, with my old furniture replaced with expensive equipment. The family photos on the walls had been replaced with abstract art that Patricia favored. It was as if they had tried to erase me from the house. The first week was strange and uncomfortable. I was back in my own home, but I felt like an intruder. Michael and Patricia avoided seeing me leaving early and returning late. The children, Emma and Lucas, seemed confused by the whole situation. Patricia had clearly said something to them as they looked at me with a mixture of confusion and wariness. It was Lucas, my 12-year-old grandson, who finally broke the ice. One afternoon, while I was in the kitchen making tea, he quietly entered and sat at the table. Grandma, do you really have dementia? He asked directly, with that brutal honesty that only children possess. The question took me by surprise, but I answered just as frankly, No, dear, I never have. Your mother said that so she could control my money. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. I didn't think so. You always remembered my fish's name, and even the day I got it. Mom never does. That small vote of confidence meant the world to me. In the following days, Lucas began spending more time with me, asking questions about the past, about his grandfather William, about what life was like in the old days. Emma took longer to warm up, being closer to Patricia, but eventually her teenage curiosity won out, and she too began to reconnect. Michael tried to talk to me whenever possible, usually when Patricia wasn't around. His attempts at reconciliation were a mix of sincere apologies and defensive excuses. Mom, you have to understand. Patricia showed me documents, messages that you supposedly sent but didn't remember. She even forged a letter from a doctor saying that you had early signs of Alzheimer's. And you never thought to ask me directly or to take me to another doctor for a second opinion? Michael looked down. I should have, but between work and, well, it's easier to believe someone when they're telling you something that somehow simplifies your life. Her words hurt me deeply. But they also revealed a painful truth. For Michael, believing his mother was losing her memory was more convenient than facing the possibility that his wife was manipulative and greedy. Patricia, on the other hand, maintained her defensive posture. The few times we met, she acted like she was the victim. I hope you're happy now, Eleanor. We're living in that little cubicle while you have this huge house all to yourself. I simply replied, I'm glad. I got what's rightfully mine back, Patricia. And you should be grateful you're not facing criminal charges in late November 2022, about a month after the meeting. At the law office, Mr. Johnson called me with news. About the sale of the house in Lake Tahoe. Mrs. Harrison, we've secured a buyer. The offer is slightly below what your daughter-in-law paid, but considering the urgency of the situation and the current market, I believe it's the best we can get. I agreed to the sale, and the recovered $138,000 was deposited back into my account. It was only a fraction of the stolen money, but it was a start. Mr. Johnson and his team continued working to track and recover the remainder. In December, we discovered something even more disturbing. Patricia had not only diverted money to the Lake Tahoe home, she had also opened secret accounts in her maiden name, Patricia Collins, where she hid some of the money. It took a detailed financial investigation and several court orders to unearth these accounts. When confronted about this, Patricia finally dropped all pretense. One tense evening in the living room with Michael, Mr. Johnson and I present. She burst out, "So what? Yes, I took the money. Someone had to take advantage of all this fortune that was just sitting there. What did an old woman like you need so much money for? What for to take to her grave?" Michael looked horrified. "Patricia, how can you talk like that?" She turned to him, furious. "Oh, shut up, Michael. You never had the guts for anything. Always so proper, so concerned about doing the right thing. If it weren't for me, we'd be living on paychecks like ordinary people while your precious mother hoarded millions for no reason." It was at that moment that Michael finally saw the true face of the woman he had married. The mask had completely slipped. "How much?" he asked softly. "How much did you take in total?" Patricia shrugged. "I don't know. $1 million, maybe more. $1 million. The number hung in the room like a toxic cloud. Michael looked like he was going to faint. Mr. Johnson intervened with his usual calm. "Miss Harrison, your confession is being recorded with your knowledge, as we informed you at the beginning of this meeting. I must warn you that you are incriminating yourself in a federal fraud crime." It was the first time I saw true fear in Patricia's eyes. "You can't do this." Michael tell them, but Michael was beyond words. He simply got up and left the room, slamming the door behind him. The following week, I received another call from Mr. Johnson. "Miss Harrison, we have one more discovery you need to know. Your son Michael has filed for divorce from Patricia. What's more, he came to our office to confess that while he wasn't aware of the extent of Patricia's crimes, he was aware of some questionable transfers. He's willing to testify against her in exchange for a lighter settlement for himself." The news of the divorce didn't surprise me after that night of confrontation. It seemed inevitable. But Michael's confession caught me off guard. Part of me wanted to believe my son had been completely innocent, simply manipulated by his wife. Knowing he had some knowledge of what was happening brought a new wave of pain. "What exactly did he know?" I asked. "He admits to signing transfer documents that he knew were suspicious. He also confesses to lying to the bank when questioned about large transactions in the trust account. And he admits to agreeing to the sale of some jewelry, although he claims Patricia convinced him that she had given permission." I sighed deeply. Michael wasn't as innocent as I wanted to believe. He'd chosen to turn a blind eye because it was convenient, because he benefited financially, even if he hadn't actively planned the scheme. "What are my options now?" Mr. Johnson patiently explained. "You can pursue criminal charges against both of us, just Patricia, or just pursue civil litigation for asset recovery. The decision is entirely yours." I spent days agonizing over this decision. Patricia deserved to face the legal consequences of her actions, of that I was certain. But Michael, despite everything, he was still my son. The thought of seeing him in prison was unbearable. In late December, on Christmas Eve, I made my decision. I called Mr. Johnson and gave him my instructions. Then I prepared a Christmas dinner and invited Michael and my grandchildren. Patricia, of course, wasn't invited. Dinner was eerily quiet at first. Emma and Lucas were uncomfortable, looked exhausted and haggard with dark circles under his eyes and slumped shoulders. I tried to make light conversation, asking about the children's school, reminiscing about memories of Christmases past when Michael was little. After dessert, I asked the kids to give us a moment alone. When they left, Michael immediately started apologizing again. Mom, I know what I did is unforgivable. I allowed this to happen. I turned a blind eye when I knew something was wrong. I don't expect your forgiveness. I looked at my son, my only son, and saw in him the boy he once was. The baby I cradled in my arms, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the teenager whose tears I wiped after his first heartbreak, the young man William and I sent off to college with such pride. Michael, what you did hurt me deeply. Betraying my trust like this, doubting my sanity, allowing your wife to isolate me and steal from me, ... These are things I never imagined my son would do. He lowered his head, tears streaming silently down his face. But I continued, you are still my son. And I believe you are not like Patricia, did not act out of malice or greed, but out of weakness and negligence. And so I have decided not to pursue criminal charges against you. Michael looked up surprised. You won't. But I thought, ... double quotes instead. I continued, you will return every penny that was knowingly embezzled with interest. You will waive any future claim to my inheritance. And most importantly, you will undergo therapy to understand why you allowed this to happen and how you can become a better person. Michael nodded fervently. Yes, of course. Anything. I've already started therapy, actually. And about the money. I'll work as long as it takes to pay it all back. As for Patricia, I continued, I don't have the same mercy. Mr. Johnson will present the evidence to the district attorney tomorrow. She will face criminal charges of fraud, embezzlement, and elder abuse. Michael didn't protest. Perhaps he had already accepted that there was no other way out for his ex-wife. And one last thing I added. This house is too big for just me. When your divorce is final, you and the kids can come back and live here if you want. Not in the guest house, but here in the main house. With me, it was then that Michael finally broke down, completely sobbing like a child. Through his tears, he murmured, Thank you, Mom. I don't deserve your kindness. No, you don't deserve it, I agreed. But family is family. And you have 2 children who need stability now more than ever. The new year of 2023 brought drastic changes. Patricia was formally charged with multiple financial crimes. After realizing the mountain of evidence against her, she accepted a deal with the prosecution, pleading guilty to fraud and embezzlement in exchange for a reduced sentence. Still, she was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to repay all the embezzled funds. Michael and Patricia's divorce was finalized in record time given the circumstances. Patricia lost custody of her children, although she was granted supervised visitation upon her release. Michael and the children moved back into the main house in February, occupying the east wing while I maintained my bedroom and private spaces in the west wing. The money gradually began to be recovered. The sale of the Lake Tahoe house, the liquidation of Patricia's secret accounts, the sale of luxury goods purchased with the embezzled money. Everything was returned to the trust William had set up for me. In the end, we managed to recover about 70% of the total amount. Mr. Johnson and his team continue to monitor my finances, now with my active participation. I learned about investing, wealth management, and financial planning, things I'd always left to William to handle. I discovered my aptitude for finance and even began making small investments on my own. Life with Michael and his grandchildren had its ups and downs. There were days when things were harmonious, as if we were building a new family. On other days, past tensions resurfaced, especially when questions about Patricia or money arose. 15-year-old Emma had trouble accepting what her mother had done. You're overreacting, she sometimes said. Mom only wanted the best for us. Michael tried to explain the gravity of Patricia's actions, but for a teenager who adored her mother, it was hard to accept. Lucas, on the other hand, adapted more easily to the new reality. At 13, he developed an interest in family history and would often ask me to show him old photo albums and tell stories about William and Michael's early years. In April 2023, I received an unexpected letter from prison. It was from Patricia. Eleanor, I know you'll probably throw this letter away without reading it, and I can't blame you. But I need to say something even if you never read it. I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for what I did. I spent weeks in mandatory therapy here, and I'm beginning to understand how deeply distorted my values and perceptions were. I grew up in a family where money was everything. My parents measured love and self-worth in dollars. When I met Michael and learned about his family's financial situation, I saw an opportunity to finally have the security and status I'd always wanted. I'm not making excuses. What I did was unforgivable. I manipulated, led, stole, and worst of all, tried to make you doubt your own mind. It's the kind of cruelty that has no justification. I just want you to know that I'm working to change. I'll probably never be a part of your lives again, and I understand that. But I hope that someday my children can at least see that I've acknowledged my mistakes and tried to become a better person. Patricia, I read the letter several times trying to detect manipulation or deceit. But something about it felt genuine, perhaps because it asked for. Nothing, didn't seek forgiveness, simply acknowledged the harm done. I put the letter away in a drawer without showing it to anyone, not even Michael. I wasn't ready to forgive Patricia, perhaps. I never would be, but there was a certain relief in knowing she was facing her actions. In June, I decided to do something I'd been putting off since William's death travel. With my finances restored and my confidence restored, I booked a 12-week trip to Italy, a place William and I had always planned to visit together but never got to. "Are you sure you'll be okay on your own, Mom?" Michael asked, worried. "I won't be alone," I replied. "I'm going with a travel group for people over 60. And besides, I've proven I can take care of myself. Don't you think the trip was transformative?" In Rome, Florence, and Venice, I felt a freedom I hadn't experienced in years. I met other people in the same stage of life, some widowed like me, some divorced, some never married, all with fascinating stories to share. I became particularly friendly with a woman named Judith, a retired college professor from Chicago. We had completely different life experiences. She dedicated her life to academia, never had children, but we connected immediately. "You know what I admire most about you, Eleanor?" Judith said, as we sipped wine in a small Venetian square. "Your resilience. After everything you've been through here, you are living fully open to new experiences." Her words made me reflect. I had survived not only the loss of William, but also the betrayal of those I trusted most. And yet I hadn't become bitter or closed off. Somehow I had found the strength to carry on, to rebuild, to even partially forgive. I returned from Italy refreshed and with a new perspective. The house that had previously felt divided between my side and Michael's side began to truly become a shared home. I began cooking meals for everyone regularly, something I hadn't done since William was alive. Michael began to include me more in decisions about the children. Emma slowly let her resistance subside. In September 2023, Mr. Johnson called me with unexpected news. "Miss Harrison, we've received some information you should know. It appears Patricia had a partner in her fraudulent schemes, someone who helped her hide some of the money. A man named David Weber. The name meant nothing to me. Who is he from? What we've gathered, a real estate agent with whom Patricia had a personal relationship." It took me a moment to process what Mr. Johnson was implying. "Are you saying Patricia was having an affair?" "Yes, Mrs. Harrison. And it appears that this relationship began even before the death of your husband, William." The revelation was shocking not only to me, but especially to Michael when I told him. Finding out he'd been cheated on by his wife years before their divorce was a blow to his already shattered sense of trust. "For how long?" he asked, his voice cracking. "For how long have I been an idiot?" I had no answer for him. Instead, I suggested he intensify his therapy sessions to process this new betrayal. The investigation into David Weber led us to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands where approximately $300,000 of the embezzled money was hidden. With international legal assistance, we were able to freeze the account and begin the process of recovering the funds. Patricia confronted in prison with evidence of the affair, and the hidden money admitted everything. In exchange for not having her sentence extended, David Weber was indicted for money laundering and complicity in fraud. For Michael, this discovery was a turning point. The idealized image he still held of his marriage was completely shattered. For weeks, he alternated between profound anger and debilitating sadness. The children, especially Emma, also suffered upon discovering this new dimension of their mother's betrayal. It was Lucas who suggested a practical solution. "Dad, Grandma, I think we all need a fresh start. This house has too many bad memories right now. He was right. Despite the renovations and changes we'd made, the house still carried the weight of the past. Every room reminded us of some manipulation, some lie, some loss. After much discussion, we made a radical decision: we would sell the house and buy two smaller properties, one for me and one for Michael and the children, preferably close to each other, but with the independence we all needed. The house sold in November 2023 for $1.4 million. I purchased a comfortable 12-room apartment in a community for those over 55 with security and amenities that gave me peace of mind. Michael found a 3-room house just 10 minutes away. On Christmas 2023, I celebrated in my new apartment with Michael, Emma, and Lucas as my guests. It was a quiet but genuinely warm celebration without the tensions of the previous year, without lies hanging in the air. Looking at my family gathered together, I thought of William and how much he would have approved of our choices. He always knew there would be challenges after his departure, and he did everything he could to protect me. What he didn't anticipate was how I would find my own strength in facing those challenges. January 2024 brought an unexpected new chapter. Judith, my friend from the Italy trip, moved to Boston to teach as a visiting professor at a local university. Our friendship blossomed quickly, and soon we were participating in cooking classes, painting lessons, and book groups together. It was Judith who encouraged me to do something with my experience. Eleanor, your story could help so many other women. Elderly people being financially exploited by family members is more common than people realize. With her encouragement, began participating in a support group for seniors experiencing financial abuse. Hearing other stories similar to mine was both distressing and comforting. Distressing to know how many people suffered silently, comforting to know I wasn't alone. In March 2024, I was invited to speak at an event about financial protection for seniors. Shaky and nervous, I shared my story with a room full of strangers. I spoke about the subtle signs of manipulation, how Patricia gradually isolated me and undermined my trust, and the importance of maintaining control over financial documents. Elderly financial abuse rarely starts with major thefts, I explained to the attentive audience. It starts with small things, suggestions that you're becoming forgotten, isolation from friends and other family members, gradual access to your accounts and documents. It's like the story of the frog in the slowly warming water. By the time you realize you're in danger, it's often too late. After the talk, I was approached by dozens of people, some sharing similar stories, others thanking me for the information that could help protect their parents or grandparents, and some legal professionals wanting my testimony to help with similar cases. In June 2024, Michael gave me some news that left me with mixed feelings. He had decided to accept a job offer in Seattle. The company he worked for in Boston was struggling after several corporate scandals, and this new opportunity represented a complete fresh start. I know it's far away, Mom, but I think we all need a change of scenery. A place where no one knows our history, where we can start over without the weight of the past. Although the thought of being away from my grandchildren was painful, I understood Michael's need for a fresh start. You need to do what's best for you and the children, I replied. There will always be phone calls, video calls, and of course visits. Actually, Michael hesitated. We were hoping you'd consider coming with us. Not to live with us, but maybe find your own place in Seattle. Start over as a family, but with the space and independence we all need. The proposal took me by surprise. Moving across the country at 69, leaving behind the few friends I'd made the support group I now led in my growing activity as a speaker on financial protection for seniors. I need to think about this, Michael. It's a big change. The following weeks were spent in deep reflection. I consulted Judith, who encouraged me to seriously consider the move. You can always continue your work with seniors in Seattle, and being close to family, ... Well, that's priceless. Mr. Johnson, who had become not only my lawyer but also a friend and advisor, offered a more cautious perspective. Ms. Harrison, you've built a new life here, a life of independence and purpose. Make sure you're not moving just to please your son or out of fear of being alone. Ultimately, the decision came after a conversation with Emma and Lucas. They visited me alone one Saturday, bringing a photo album they'd put together. "Grandma, we made this for you," Emma said, handing me the leather-bound album. Upon opening, I found not only recent photos of our family, but also old ones some I hadn't even known existed. Photos of William and me as young men, of Michael as a baby, of birthdays and Christmases past. And at the end, a page with a house drawn on it and the words, "Our future in Seattle with you." "How did you get these old photos?" I asked, excited. "Dad found boxes of photos in the attic of our old house before we sold it," Lucas explained. "We spent weeks digitizing everything and organizing this album. Looking at those images, the past, the present, and the possibility of a shared future, I made my decision. Yes," I finally said. "I'm going to Seattle with you." The next 3 months were a whirlwind of preparations. I sold my Boston apartment, found a comfortable condo in Seattle. 15 minutes from Michael's new home, arranged the transfer of my assets, and said goodbye to friends and acquaintances. Judith promised to visit regularly, and Mr. Johnson recommended an excellent attorney in Seattle to continue overseeing my legal affairs. The senior support group I led organized an emotional farewell, with many participants sharing how my story had helped them. In October 2024, at age 70, I moved to Seattle. My new apartment overlooked Puget Sound, with mountains in the background, a completely different landscape than I was used to, but incredibly beautiful. Michael and the kids helped me decorate the space with a mix of new items and family treasures we'd managed to preserve. The adjustment wasn't easy. I missed Boston, the routines. I'd established the familiar faces. But there was also a sense of liberation. No one in Seattle knew my story. No one looked at me with pity or morbid curiosity. I quickly found purpose. I contacted local organizations that worked with seniors and began giving talks on financial protection. I enrolled in classes at the local university, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the courage. I started with art history and, to my surprise, discovered I had a talent for painting. Michael flourished in his new job, free from the shadows of his past. Emma, now 16, found a group of friends at her new school and started talking about college. Lucas, at 14, joined the swim team and developed an interest in marine science, inspired by the coastal landscape of our new city. Our Sundays became sacred. We always had lunch together, alternating between my apartment and their house. Sometimes it was just a quick meal, followed by separate activities. Other times we spent the entire day together, exploring Seattle, visiting museums, or simply talking. In December 2024, I received an unexpected letter. Patricia had been released early for good behavior. In the letter, she informed me that she had decided to start over in Miami, away from all of us. She didn't ask to see her children, acknowledging that she would need to rebuild this relationship gradually, if that were even possible. I showed the letter to Michael, who read it silently and then simply nodded. "I hope she's really changed," was all he said. The children reacted differently. Emma wanted to stay in touch with her mother, while Lucas seemed indifferent. Michael agreed to allow Emma to exchange emails with Patricia as long as he could monitor the communication initially. Life continued at its new pace. In February 2025, I received an invitation to write a book based on my experience, focusing on how seniors can protect themselves from family financial abuse. The writing process was therapeutic, allowing me to fully process everything that had happened and transform my pain into something useful for others. In March 2025, exactly 5 years after William's death, I visited his grave in Boston. Michael accompanied me, and we stood side by side before the simple headstone that marked my husband's resting place. "He would be proud of you, Mom," Michael said softly, "of how you faced everything, of how you found the strength to start over." "He would be proud of both of us," I replied, "of how we overcame the worst and rebuilt our family." We returned to Seattle the next day, and as the plane took off, I stared out the window at the city of Boston, disappearing below. I thought about everything that had happened in the last 5 years, the pain, the betrayal, the struggle, and finally the redemption. William had done his best to protect me, keeping that letter hidden and establishing the trust. But in the end, it was my own strength that saved me, the determination. Not to be victimized, to fight for what was mine, to rebuild my life on my own terms. Today, at 72, I look back and see not only tragedy and betrayal, but also growth and transformation. I lost so much precious jewels laden with memories money that was never fully recovered years that could have been peaceful. But I gained something equally valuable, self-knowledge, inner strength, and a new appreciation for life. Michael continues his healing and growth process. Our relationship, while never quite the same, is now more honest and respectful. Emma and Lucas are growing into healthy, well-rounded teenagers despite the traumas of their past. As for Patricia, I can't say I've completely forgiven her. What she did left deep scars that will never fully disappear. But I don't allow hatred for her to consume my energy or define my life. She made her choices and is living with the consequences. I've learned that life rarely goes the way we plan. William and I thought we'd grow old together, traveling and spoiling grandchildren. Instead, I was forced on a completely different journey, one of loss, betrayal, discovery, and ultimately rebirth. If you're listening to my story and you can relate in any way perhaps, you're going, "We're something similar," or know someone who is want you to know that there is hope. No matter your age, no matter how desperate the situation seems, you have the strength within you to start over, to fight for what's cheered. Oh, what's yours to rebuild your life. If this story touched you in any way, please leave a like so it can reach more people who need to hear it. Share it with someone who might be facing similar situations. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories that can inspire and provide hope. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, your independence, and your happiness. I found my way back from the darkness, and you can find yours too.